The next series of filters we want to look at are the ubiquitous blur filters. Blur filters don't have the ability to be used by the filter gallery, so we'll have to look at them here. We won't look at all of them. Let me just show you a couple. For example, watch what happens when I do a filter called blur average. Yeah, whoa, that's cool. What did that do? When you use the averaging filter, the computer will look for the average of all the colors in the image and then blend it together into a solid color. Yeah, great. What do I want this for? Not a lot of reasons you would do this. However, let's try this. Let me press undo. Come over here and pick up your elliptical marquee tool and draw yourself a nice big ellipse. We're going to do a vignette. All right, something about like that. Go to the word select on the pull-down menu and go down to modify feather. I want to soften the vignette edge. 20 is fine. Go ahead and do 20. That's actually 40 pixels. That's 20 on this side of the line and 20 on that side of the line. We want to average the outside, not the inside. We've got the inside selected. So we're going to go to the word select one more time and go to inverse. Reverse my selection. Now go to the word filter and go down to blur and select average. What you're doing, I suppose, is you're creating a vignette mask, but the vignette mask is now an average of the colors that were surrounding the image, not your typical white or black vignette. Might be a little bit more practical than averaging out the entire image. That's what average is. Some of the others up here, actually, let's do this too. This button right here is for history. I love history. It's like multiple undos. If you don't have history open, go to the word window and go to history. But I'm going to click here and go all the way to the top to get back to the original image. I love history and I love undos. We got that done. Let's close that out. If we go back to the word filter and go to blur, you've got blur and blur more, which is basically will progressively make the image more and more out of focus, if you will. Box blur is like an intelligent Gaussian. Gaussian is the one we use a lot. It is considered, I think, the most popular filter in Adobe Photoshop. It blurs masks. It does a lot of things. You can use blur to actually make the entire image go out of focus. The one I want to look at next, though, is lens blur. Let's go to lens blur. Okay, well, that's impressive. Lens blur will allow you to change how an image was taken in terms of depth. So we got to have one more thing before we do this. Let's get out of here. Just wanted to show you that quick. Go into channels. Let me move that over so you can see this. Channels are the colors of an image. It's how the computer knows how to mix the colors to produce everything you see up here. If I click on red, lighter means more and darker means less. So there's more red here than there would be here. Same thing with green and blue. You mix them all together, you see the colors. Channels is a very important part of Adobe Photoshop. We're here to create an alpha channel mask. We're going to click the new button right there. Boom, goes black. Make sure your colors are white to black. Click this little button here and they'll go white to black. Select your gradient tool. Click the blue button right here. Make sure you have the upper left-hand corner gradient selected. Click this button to make sure you have the linear gradient selected. Get right about here and drag straight down by holding the Shift key. Something like that. Now you may have to experiment with the mask. What are we creating? We're creating a mask that controls that lens filter. We're saying, computer, blur more up here than here, and slowly unblur it as it gets to the black. Before we move our channels, let's go ahead and click RGB to get our image back. Let's go ahead and pull this then back over here and get it back out of the way and go to layers. Filter, blur, lens blur. See the difference now? We're using, and by default it will assume we want to do this, we're using our alpha channel. It was named Alpha 1. Alpha 1, more blurring up here because the black goes down here. Black means mask. It's as if I took the photograph with a larger f-stop. Now I know what I did with this image. I stopped it down to an f22, and that's why if we turn off the preview, where everything's in focus. But I didn't really want to do that, but I can't go back to Arizona and take the photograph again. I do this. It's one of the blur features that I do find pretty valuable. And one way to control it would be through an alpha channel. You can make them in any way that you want. That's a pretty cool one. Lens blur. Let's do one more here. I'm going to go to this lady right here. My goal with this image is to smooth out some of the facial features on this woman without impacting the detail areas. There's a trick to doing this. We need a copy of her. We're going to come over to our layers palette, and we are going to drag her down on top of the new icon. That's the one we're going to be working on. So make sure you've got that one selected. Go up to the word filter on the pull-down menu. Go down to blur and select surface blur. Let's turn the preview on. What surface blur attempts to do is blur large areas and try to preserve details. If we turn this on and off, you can see like her lips don't change much at all, yet her face is getting smoother. That's what I want. Radius in pixels determines the bridge between where it smooths and where it doesn't. And if we increase that, we're going to get details back we don't want. So we need to make that a small number. Now, we don't want to go all the way down to 1 because then we're going to lose everything. So what we're going to do is bring it up to about maybe a 9 or 10. As you can see right in here, some of those areas I wanted to get rid of are gone. Threshold, where in terms of shift and brightness are the edges I'm supposed to preserve? If I increase that number, I'm going way too far. You can see right now it almost looks like a doll face. We'll lower that down again to about a 10 or so, maybe a little bit more. Let's try about a 13. And again, on and off. I like what I see. Click OK. Of course, if we turn this on and off, you can see the before and the after. Here's the trick. Change the blending mode of that layer to a new one, CS5, lighter color. If I turn it on and off, the effect is very subtle. You might also want to lower the opacity a little bit if you think it's a little bit too intense. But as you can see, most of the details in the areas that I want to preserve are there. And it is softening up and taking away some of these areas like right here. It's taking those away, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. Surface blur. If you're using it the way I'm using it, make sure you do it in a separate layer and then combine the original back with it, and you've got a smoother image.